Searing pain lanced through Princess Vortis's body as her cryopod smashed into Earth's rugged terrain. The punishment her tyrannical father, King Zarthon, inflicted on her for defying his despotic rule had begun. Stripped of her royal title, advanced technology, and everything she knew, Vortis clawed her way out of the crashed spacecraft into an alien forest. Earth's unfamiliar colors, sounds, and smells assaulted her heightened denobulan senses. Vortis stood unsteadily under the canopies of towering evergreens, her heart pounding in the thinner atmosphere. Resentment and despair welled up inside her. Memories of her climactic confrontation with Zarthon flashed through her mind, how she openly challenged his oppressive policies in the throne room, demanding an end to the stifling of denobulan artistic expression and freedom. Her impassioned call for revolution, her subsequent arrest, her father's rage as he cast her out and exiled her to this primitive world to break her rebellious spirit. Lost, injured, and desperate for shelter, Vortis stumbled through the woods until she came upon a rustic cabin, seemingly in the middle of nowhere. She broke in, hoping to find a moment's respite, but instead startled the cabin's occupant, a reclusive human artist named Eric Warren. Though initially frightened by the strange purple-skinned woman, Eric's fear turned to concern when he noticed her dire state. With compassion, he tended to her wounds and took her in. As Vortis recovered under Eric's care, the seeds of wonder began to sprout inside her. She marveled at the tranquil beauty of Earth's natural landscapes, felt the gentle warmth of Eric's demeanor, even through the language barrier. But unbeknownst to Vortis, the specter of her past loomed on the horizon. King Zarthon, facing a growing uprising on Denobula inspired by Vortis's rebellion, would stop at nothing to drag his wayward daughter back to face his wrath and crush the sparks of revolution. His ruthless enforcer, Craxus, was already en route to Earth to retrieve the exiled princess by any means necessary. The stage was set for a battle of wills that would determine the fate of two worlds. On Earth, Vortis would discover both the wonders and the untapped strength of the human spirit, and she would need every ounce of that strength to protect her new home from the cruelties of her old one. As days turned into weeks, Vortis found herself drawn into the quiet rhythms of life in Eric's secluded cabin. The human artist opened her eyes to simple wonders she had never known on Denobula. The earthy scent of the forest after a rainfall, the gentle caress of a cool breeze on her skin, the symphony of birdsongs that greeted each dawn. Under Eric's patient guidance, Vortis learned to see the world through an artist's eyes. In the golden light of late afternoons, Eric and Vortis would sit side by side on the porch, sketching the verdant landscape before them. Though they could not speak each other's languages, they found a profound connection through their shared passion for creation. As Vortis's pencil glided across the paper, capturing the sinuous curves of a meandering stream, she felt a sense of peace and belonging she had never known in the cold halls of her father's palace. Eric delighted in watching Vortis blossom as an artist. Her denobulan heritage lent her work an ethereal quality, an interplay of light and shadow that seemed to vibrate with an inner luminescence. He marveled at the way her slender purple fingers gripped the paintbrush, the look of intense concentration on her angular features as she lost herself in the joy of creation. As the bond between them deepened, Vortis began to question the rigid beliefs she had been raised with. The suffocating conformity enforced by her father stood in stark contrast to the expressive freedom celebrated on Earth. She realized that the Denobulan way was not the only way, that beauty and meaning could be found in diversity and individual truth. But their idyllic existence could not last forever. On a moonless night, the vengeful specter of Vortis's past came crashing into their sanctuary. Craxus, King Zarthon's fearsome enforcer, smashed through the cabin door in a blaze of laser fire. Eric leapt to Vortis's defense, shielding her with his body, but he was no match for the Denobulan warrior's superior strength and technology. In a last desperate bid to save Eric's life, Vortis unleashed a part of herself she had long kept hidden, the telekinetic gifts that marked her as different, even among her own kind. With a primal scream of rage and terror, she hurled a burst of psychic energy at Craxus, sending him flying through the air like a rag doll. In the stunned aftermath of the attack, Vortis made a heart-wrenching decision. She knew her presence endangered Eric, that Craxus would never stop hunting her. With tears streaming down her face, she fled into the night, leaving behind the only place she had ever truly felt at home. Eric stared in numb shock at the wreckage of his cabin, his heart shattering as he realized Vortis was gone. He sank to his knees among the shattered remnants of their shared life, overwhelmed by despair and loss. But even in his darkest moment, he clung to the faint hope that somehow, someday, he would find her again. Miles away, Vortis emerged from the forest into the alien concrete jungle of Portland. Alone, terrified, and hunted in an unfamiliar world, she steeled herself for the grim battle for survival that lay ahead. The only light in the darkness was the embers of the inner fire Eric had helped ignite, the unquenchable yearning to live, to create, to be free. Vortis disappeared into the shadows of the city, determined to forge a new path, even as the sinister forces of her past closed in around her. The neon-lit streets of Portland blurred past Vortis as she ran, her alien physiology pushing her beyond human limits. She ducked into alleyways, scaled fire escapes, and leapt across rooftops, always staying one step ahead of Craxus's relentless pursuit. Days melted into weeks as Vortis scavenged for survival in the urban jungle. She found an abandoned warehouse on the city's outskirts, its cavernous interior offering temporary sanctuary. With a wave of her hand, Vortis's telekinetic powers lifted discarded crates and sheets of metal, arranging them into a makeshift shelter. As she ventured out for supplies, the vibrant murals adorning Portland's walls caught Vortis's eye. Bold colors and abstract shapes danced across brick and concrete, echoing the artistic awakening she'd experienced with Eric. Her fingers twitched, yearning to create. In the warehouse, Vortis gathered cast-off objects, rusted gears, broken glass, tangles of wire. Her powers hummed to life, lifting the detritus into the air. She wove the disparate elements together, crafting a delicate latticework that seemed to defy gravity. The sculpture pulsed with an otherworldly energy, reflecting both her alien heritage and newfound human inspiration. Word spread through Portland's art scene of the mysterious installations appearing overnight. Marcus Dante, owner of the trendy Nebula Gallery, tracked the rumors to their source. He found Vortis in her warehouse, surrounded by her ethereal creations. "This is extraordinary," Marcus breathed, circling a floating tableau of interlocking geometric shapes. "I've never seen anything like it." Vortis tensed, ready to flee, but Marcus's genuine awe gave her pause. "I want to represent you," he said. "Your work deserves to be seen. We can keep your identity secret, give you a pseudonym." Vortis hesitated, weighing the risks against the chance to fully explore her newfound passion. "Call me Nova," she said finally. Nova's debut exhibition at Nebula Gallery electrified the art world. Critics hailed her as a visionary, marveling at the seemingly impossible physics of her sculptures. Vortis reveled in the freedom of expression, pouring her experiences into each piece. Through the Portland art scene, Vortis formed her first true friendships on Earth. Lila Chen, a young painter with a shock of blue hair, took Vortis under her wing. They spent long nights discussing technique, philosophy, and the power of art to spark change. "Your work speaks to me," Lila said one evening as they shared takeout in her cluttered studio. "It's like a cry for freedom, for individuality." Vortis nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "Where I come from, conformity is everything. Art is controlled. Here it's wild, boundless." Inspired by Lila and other activist artists, Vortis began incorporating themes of social justice into her installations. She crafted a piece called Broken Chains, a swirling vortex of shattered manacles and soaring figures that resonated deeply with marginalized communities. But even as Nova's star rose, Vortis remained hyper-vigilant. She encoded secret messages in her artworks, leaving clues only she could decipher to guide her movements across the city. Each new hiding spot brought moments of peace, shattered by Craxus's inevitable approach. One night, as Vortis put the finishing touches on her latest piece, a familiar energy prickled at the edge of her senses. She whirled to see Craxus's hulking form, silhouetted in the doorway, weapon raised. "Your little game ends now, princess," he snarled. Vortis's eyes darted to her sculpture, an intricate mobile of razor-sharp shards. With a burst of telekinetic energy, she sent the deadly artwork hurtling towards Craxus. The deadly mobile sliced through the air, its razor-sharp edges glinting in the dim light. Craxus's eyes widened as he dove to the side, narrowly avoiding decapitation. The sculpture crashed into the wall behind him, embedding itself in the plaster. Vortis seized the moment of distraction, her telekinetic powers surging. She hurled crates and art supplies at Craxus, forcing him back towards the exit. With a final push of psychic energy, she slammed the heavy metal door shut, buying herself precious seconds to escape. Heart pounding, Vortis scrambled out the back window and into the maze of Portland's streets. She didn't stop running until she reached Nebula Gallery, bursting through the door and startling Marcus. "Nova, what's wrong?" Marcus asked, alarmed by her disheveled appearance. "I'm in danger," Vortis gasped. "I need to disappear." Marcus nodded, no questions asked. He led her to a hidden storage room beneath the gallery, a sanctuary for artists fleeing oppressive regimes. As Vortis caught her breath, Marcus activated a series of scrambling devices to mask her energy signature. In the weeks that followed, Vortis threw herself into her art with renewed fervor. Her latest installations crackled with an intensity that both thrilled and unsettled viewers. Critics raved about Nova's bold new direction, unaware of the turmoil behind the scenes. Lila visited Vortis in her underground hideout, bringing news from the outside world. "Your work is making waves, Nova," she said excitedly. "People are talking about revolution, about challenging the status quo." Vortis smiled wryly. If only they knew. But her relative safety was short-lived. One afternoon, as Vortis put the finishing touches on a piece, a commotion erupted upstairs, the gallery filled with the sound of breaking glass and screams. Vortis's blood ran cold as she recognized the harsh Denobulan voices. She pressed her ear to the ceiling, straining to hear. "Where is the alien fugitive known as Nova?" a deep voice demanded. "By order of King Zarthon, she is to be apprehended immediately." Marcus's voice steady despite the chaos. "I don't know who you're talking about. This is a legitimate art gallery." A sickening crunch, followed by Marcus's cry of pain. Vortis clenched her fists, torn between self-preservation and loyalty to her friend. The decision was made for her as the hidden door flew open, revealing a towering Denobulan soldier. "Commander Volox," Vortis realized with a jolt of recognition. "Princess Vortis," Volox sneered. "Your father sends his regards." Vortis reacted on instinct, her powers flaring to life. She flung Volox backwards, buying herself a precious moment to sprint up the stairs and into the gallery proper. The scene that greeted her was one of devastation. Priceless artworks lay shattered on the floor, and Marcus slumped against a wall, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. Denobulan soldiers advanced on Vortis from all sides, their weapons trained on her. Time seemed to slow as Vortis assessed her options. She could fight, potentially harming innocent bystanders in the process. She could surrender, dooming herself to a fate worse than death on Denobula. Or she could run. With a burst of telekinetic energy, Vortis shattered the gallery's front window. She leapt through the cascade of falling glass, hitting the pavement at a dead sprint. Behind her, she heard Volox barking orders and the pounding of boots. As she ran, Vortis's mind raced. She needed a plan, a way to turn the tables on her pursuers. Her gaze fell on a vibrant mural adorning a nearby building, and inspiration struck. Vortis ducked into an alley, fumbling for her phone. She sent a rapid-fire series of texts to Lila and her other artist friends. "Need help? Nebula Gallery? Bring supplies. Spread the word." She pocketed the phone and kept moving, formulating a desperate plan. If she could harness the power of human creativity, perhaps she stood a chance against Denobulan military might. As the sun dipped below Portland's skyline, Vortis steeled herself for the confrontation to come. She would make her stand, not with violence, but with art. And in doing so, she might just ignite a revolution that would span two worlds. Worlds? Vortis's message spread like wildfire through Portland's artist community. Within hours, dozens of creators converged on Nebula Gallery, arms laden with paints, projectors, and improvised tools. Lila arrived first, her blue hair windswept and eyes blazing with drive. "We're with you, Nova. she said, gripping Vortis's hand. What's the plan? Vortis surveyed the gathering crowd, her mind racing. We turn this city into our canvas, she declared, a labyrinth to confuse and misdirect our pursuers. The artist sprang into action. Murals bloomed across buildings, optical illusions warping perspective. Holographic projections cast false doorways and phantom figures. Vortis directed it all, her telekinetic powers lifting painters to inaccessible heights and manipulating light itself. As dawn broke, Portland had transformed into a dizzying dreamscape. Commander Volox and his troops stumbled through the altered landscape, their tracking devices rendered useless by the electromagnetic interference from Vortis's sculptures. Amid the chaos, a familiar face appeared. Eric, bruised but alive, pushed through the crowd. I couldn't let you face this alone, he said, pulling Vortis into a fierce embrace. Their reunion was cut short as Marcus limped towards them, his face grim. They've called for reinforcements, he reported. We need to get you out of here. Vortis nodded, her mind already leaping ahead. Not just me, she said, all of us. It's time to take the fight to Denobula. In the days that followed, Vortis's ragtag group of artists and rebels coalesced into a formidable resistance. They commandeered an abandoned warehouse, transforming it into a hidden base of operations. Eric and Marcus worked tirelessly to gather intelligence on Denobulan weaknesses, while Lila coordinated a network of human allies across the globe. Vortis stood at the center of it all, her powers growing stronger with each passing day. She manipulated salvaged Denobulan technology, merging it with human ingenuity to construct a vehicle capable of interstellar travel. As the spacecraft took shape, Vortis channeled her artistic vision into a new form of revolution. She created installations that doubled as encrypted transmissions, broadcasting calls for uprising across the cosmos. On Denobula, whispers of change began to circulate, igniting sparks of rebellion against Zarthon's iron rule. The night before their planned departure, Vortis found herself alone with Eric on the warehouse roof. They gazed up at the stars, the weight of their impending separation heavy between them. I have to do this, Vortis said softly. For my people, and for the freedom I've found here. Eric nodded, his eyes shining with unshed tears. I know. Just come back to me. Their lips met in a bittersweet kiss, a promise and a farewell wrapped into one. At dawn, Vortis stood before her assembled crew, humans from all walks of life, united by a shared vision of creative freedom and interstellar justice. Marcus and Lila flanked her, their faces set with unshakable focus. Today we take the fight to the stars, Vortis declared, her voice ringing through the hangar. For art, for freedom, for the future of two worlds. With a gesture, she lowered the spacecraft's boarding ramp. As her followers filed aboard, Vortis cast one last look at the city that had become her sanctuary. Portland shimmered in the morning light, a testament to human creativity and resilience. The ship's engines roared to life, Denobulan technology harmonizing with human innovation. Vortis took her place at the helm, her hands dancing over alien controls. With a surge of power, they burst through Earth's atmosphere and into the inky void of space. But their element of surprise was short-lived. As they emerged from hyperspace above Denobula, a vast armada of warships filled the view screen. At their center loomed Zarthon's flagship, a colossus of gleaming metal and pulsing energy weapons. Craxus's voice crackled over the comm system, dripping with contempt. Surrender now, traitor, and perhaps the king will show mercy. Vortis's eyes narrowed as she assessed the overwhelming odds. She turned to her crew, seeing not fear, but unwavering tenacity on their faces. Lila, she said, a plan forming in her mind, contact your infiltration team. It's time to show these tyrants the true power of human ingenuity. As Craxus's ships opened fire, Vortis's fingers flew over the controls. With a burst of telekinetic energy, she reached out into the void, bending trajectories and redirecting enemy fire. The battle for Denobula's future had begun. Begun had reached its crescendo. Vortis's hands danced over the controls, her telekinetic powers stretching out into the void. Energy beams bent and warped, missing their targets by mere meters. The human crew worked in perfect synchronicity, their months of training paying off as they outmaneuvered the Denobulan fleet. "Lila, now!" Vortis shouted over the din of battle. Lila's fingers flew across her console, activating the hidden network of saboteurs they'd planted throughout Zarthon's fleet. Explosions blossomed across enemy ships as critical systems failed. The tide of battle shifted. As Zarthon's flagship listed to port, its weapons systems compromised, Vortis seized her chance. She pushed the engines to their limit, aiming straight for the heart of the enemy armada. The ship shuddered under the strain, but held together, a testament to the fusion of Denobulan tech and human ingenuity. They burst through the scattered remains of Zarthon's fleet, descending towards Denobula's surface. Vortis's heart raced as she saw her homeworld, its beauty marred by the scars of oppression. The landing was rough, but they touched down intact near the outskirts of the capital. Vortis led her ragtag army from the ship, their faces set with dogged persistence as they marched towards Zarthon's palace. The streets erupted into chaos. Loyalist forces clashed with rebel sympathizers. Vortis used her powers to clear a path, deflecting weapons fire and hurling debris at their attackers. The human rebels fought with a ferocity that shocked the Denobulans, their unconventional tactics sowing confusion in the ranks of Zarthon's guards. As they neared the palace gates, a familiar figure stepped into view. Craxus, his armor scorched and dented, raised his weapon. "This ends now, princess," he snarled. Before Vortis could react, Craxus fired. Time seemed to slow as she saw the energy blast hurtling towards her. Then, a blur of motion. Lila throwing herself into the path of the shot. "No!" Vortis screamed as Lila crumpled to the ground, a smoking hole in her chest. Rage and grief fueled Vortis's powers. With a primal scream, she unleashed a wave of telekinetic force that sent Craxus and his remaining soldiers flying. The palace gates crumbled under the assault. Vortis cradled Lila's body for a moment, tears streaming down her face. "I'll make this right," she whispered. "For you, for all of us." The final push into the palace was a blur of violence and desperation. Vortis led the charge, her powers manifesting in ways she'd never experienced before. Walls crumbled at her touch. Loyalist soldiers found themselves flung aside by invisible hands. At last, they reached the throne room. Zarthon sat upon his gaudy seat, surrounded by cowering advisors and the remnants of his personal guard. "You could have ruled by my side," Zarthon said, his voice eerily calm. "Instead, you bring ruin to our world." Vortis strode forward, her eyes blazing. "No, father, I bring freedom." With a gesture, she tore the crown from Zarthon's head and crushed it in midair. As the twisted metal clattered to the floor, the fight seemed to leave the deposed king. He slumped in his seat as Vortis's followers swarmed the room, securing the last holdouts of the old regime. In the days that followed, Vortis worked tirelessly to stabilize the situation. She imprisoned Zarthon and his inner circle, stripping them of all authority. Marcus proved invaluable, using his business acumen to re-establish trade lines with Earth and secure vital supplies. Standing on the balcony of the palace, now repurposed as a seat of democratic governance, Vortis addressed the people of Denobula. Holographic projectors carried her image to every corner of the planet. "For too long, our world has suffocated under the weight of oppression," she declared. "No more. Together, we will build a society founded on freedom of expression and self-tenacity. The arts, long suppressed, will become the cornerstone of our new cultural identity." As she spoke, Vortis used her powers to manipulate the very air around her. Swirling patterns of light and color danced above the assembled crowd, a breathtaking display of the creative potential now unleashed. "Let this be the dawn of a new era for Denobula," Vortis continued. "An era where every voice is heard, where innovation and imagination are celebrated." The crowd erupted in cheers, their jubilation tinged with a sense of uncertainty. Centuries of rigid control had left deep marks on Denobulan society. The path ahead would not be easy. As Vortis retreated from the balcony, Marcus approached with a concerned expression. "We've detected chatter among some of the old guard," he reported. "A former governor named Lotak is rallying opposition to the reforms." Vortis nodded, her expression hardening. The revolution, it seemed, was far from finished. But as she gazed out over the city, watching the first hesitant displays of public art blooming on newly liberated walls. She felt a surge of hope. The future of Denobula hung in the balance, poised between the familiar chains of the past and the wild, beautiful uncertainty of freedom. The transformation of Denobula unfolded gradually, like a mural coming to life stroke by stroke. Vortis stood at the helm of this cultural renaissance, her vision of artistic freedom taking root in the fertile soil of a liberated world. Years passed, and the once austere streets of the capital blossomed with color and creativity. Holographic sculptures danced in public squares, their forms shifting in response to the emotions of passers-by. Walls that had once borne propaganda now served as canvases for ever-changing murals, their pigments infused with bioluminescent algae that pulsed with the city's rhythms. Vortis divided her time between nurturing new talent at the artist colony she'd founded in the ruins of Zarthon's palace and embarking on speaking tours across the galaxy. Her reputation grew, attracting creators from 100 worlds to study and collaborate on Denobula. During one such tour, Vortis found herself on the fringes of known space, addressing a conference of xenoanthropologists. As she concluded her speech on the transformative power of art, a figure approached her. His skin was mottled green, eyes milky white, unmistakably Chalnoth. "Impressive words, Vortis of Denobula," he said, voice gravelly. "I am Rygath, once chief geneticist to the Chalnoth Empire." Vortis tensed, aware of the Chalnoth reputation for brutality. "And now?" "An exile seeking asylum," Rygath replied. "My experiments were deemed unethical, but I believe they could revolutionize your work." In the privacy of her quarters, Rygath laid out his proposal: gene splicing, combining the best traits of human and Denobulan DNA, the potential for enhanced creativity, for pushing the boundaries of her art beyond imagination. Vortis hesitated, her fingers tracing the scars left by Zarthon's suppression fields. "And the risks?" Rygath's milky eyes gleamed. "Minimal compared to the potential gains." The procedure took place in a makeshift lab aboard Vortis's ship. As Rygath's modified retrovirus coursed through her veins, Vortis felt a fire ignite within her cells. Her perception sharpened, colors intensifying until they seemed to spill off the visible spectrum. Back on Denobula, Vortis's new abilities manifested in spectacular fashion. Her telekinesis evolved, allowing her to manipulate energy itself. She crafted living light sculptures that danced and sang, their forms shifting in response to the thoughts of onlookers. But the fire that burned within her grew hotter, harder to control. During the unveiling of her latest installation, a massive crystal spire in the heart of the capital, Vortis lost her grip on reality. The world blurred, sound stretching into incomprehensible noise. She lashed out, raw power erupting from her fingertips. The crystal spire shattered, its fragments igniting in midair. A chain reaction tore through the city, Vortis's uncontrolled energy fueling the inferno. By the time she regained lucidity, a third of the capital lay in smoldering ruins. The death toll climbed into the thousands. Vortis stood amid the devastation, ash coating her skin. The cries of the wounded, the acrid stench of burning polymers, all of it seared into her enhanced senses. She turned to Marcus, his face streaked with soot and disbelief. "I can't stay," Vortis said, her voice hollow. This power is too dangerous." Before anyone could stop her, Vortis fled. She commandeered a scout ship from the spaceport, pushing its engines to the limit as she hurtled away from Denobula. The vastness of space swallowed her, a speck of guilt and self-loathing adrift in the cosmic void. Vortis wandered from world to world, never staying long enough to form connections. She meditated in the crystal caves of Andoria, sought wisdom from the silicon monks of Teller Prime. Slowly, painfully, she learned to harness the chaotic energies within her. Her return to Earth came years later, drawn by an inexplicable pull towards her adopted home. As Vortis's ship breached the atmosphere, her heart sank. The vibrant world she remembered lay broken and subdued. New York's iconic skyline was a jagged ruin. The streets of Tokyo crawled with armored patrols, their insignia a twisted version of the Chalnoth imperial crest. Concentration camps dotted the landscape, smoke rising from their incinerators. Vortis landed in the ruins of Portland, her old gallery long since reduced to rubble. As she stepped from her ship, a gaunt figure emerged from the shadows. Recognition hit her like a physical blow. "Eric," she whispered. He nodded, his once kind eyes now hard with survival. "Welcome back to Earth, Vortis. You're just in time for the resistance." "Welcome back to Earth, Vortis. You're just in time for the resistance." Eric's words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken pain. Vortis took in the devastation around her, her enhanced senses overwhelmed by the stench of decay and the eerie silence of a conquered world. "The Chalnoth," she breathed. "How?" Eric's laugh was bitter. "Turns out Rygath wasn't just a rogue scientist. He was their vanguard." Guilt twisted in Vortis's gut. Her pursuit of artistic perfection had left Earth vulnerable. But wallowing wouldn't undo the damage. She straightened, cosmic energy crackling at her fingertips. "Show me where to start," she said. The liberation of Earth unfolded like a brutal, chaotic symphony. Vortis channeled her powers into precise strikes against Chalnoth strongholds. She tore apart their gene labs, freeing human test subjects. With each victory, hope spread like wildfire. In the rubble of Times Square, Vortis raised her hands. The twisted metal of fallen skyscrapers groaned, lifting into the air. She wove the debris into a colossal statue, a human figure rising from the ashes, fist raised in defiance. As the last piece slotted into place, a cheer erupted from the gathered survivors. "This is who you are," Vortis called out, her voice carrying on waves of energy. "Unbroken, unbowed." With New York secured, Vortis turned her attention to the global stage. She spearheaded assaults on Chalnoth-held cities, always leaving behind monumental artworks as symbols of human resilience. Tokyo's skyline was reborn in swirling patterns of light and shadow. The favelas of Rio pulsed with murals that seemed to breathe. As humanity reclaimed its world, Vortis established the new Renaissance Institute. Former concentration camps were transformed into sprawling art communes. She poured her knowledge into eager students, nurturing the spark of creativity that had nearly been extinguished. "Art isn't a luxury," she told a class of wide-eyed apprentices. "It's how we process trauma, how we heal. Your creations will rebuild the human spirit." But not everyone saw Vortis as Earth's savior. General Navtek watched from the shadows, his paranoia growing with each of her triumphs. He saw her galactic perspective as a threat to human autonomy. "She's made us dependent," Navtek hissed to his inner circle. "We trade one alien overlord for another." The attacks began small, a bombed art installation, a ransacked school. Vortis preached restraint, even as the violence escalated, but when a blast tore through her favorite pupil's workshop, something snapped. Raw cosmic power erupted from Vortis. She soared above the city, her form blazing like a newborn star. With terrifying precision, she located Navtek's hidden base. The general's eyes widened in fear as the sky itself seemed to tear open. When the dust settled, nothing remained of the compound but a smoking crater. Vortis landed, horrified by her own destructive potential. Without a word, she took to the stars, leaving Earth to heal without her volatile presence. Years passed in self-imposed exile. Vortis meditated on distant worlds, grappling with the duality of her nature. Then, a strange signal caught her attention. Energy patterns eerily similar to her own, emanating from Earth. She returned to find a changed world. Pockets of humans had developed incredible abilities: telekinesis, energy manipulation, feats that defied scientific explanation. Vortis realized her prolonged exposure must have awakened something latent in human DNA. "They need guidance," she murmured, watching a teenager accidentally level a building with an uncontrolled burst of power. The Cosmic Academy took shape on the ruins of Navtek's compound. Vortis gathered these emerging Homo superiors, creating a haven where they could safely explore their gifts. As she watched her students master the cosmos itself, Vortis felt a profound sense of purpose. "You carry the future within you," she told her charges. "Let's see how bright we can make it shine." The Cosmic Academy thrived under Vortis's guidance, its gleaming spires reaching towards the stars. Within its halls, generations of Homo superiors honed their extraordinary abilities. Vortis watched with pride as her students mastered the fundamental forces of the universe. In the main atrium, a group of young metahumans practiced energy projection. Beams of crackling power arced between them, controlled with increasing precision. Nearby, advanced students hovered in meditation, their bodies phasing in and out of reality as they explored the boundaries of space-time. Vortis floated serenely above it all, her form shimmering with cosmic energy. She reached out with her mind, feeling the interconnected web of her students' consciousnesses. Their potential seemed limitless. A sudden psychic tremor shattered the Academy's tranquility. Vortis's eyes snapped open, her serene expression hardening into one of alarm. She sensed a malevolent presence rapidly approaching Earth. Before she could warn her students, the sky above the Academy darkened. A massive Chalnoth warship materialized, its hull overflowing with weapons. A barrage of energy beams lanced down, carving smoking furrows through the Academy grounds. Panic erupted as students scattered. Vortis's voice boomed across the campus. "Defensive positions! Protect the younger students!" The air crackled with ozone as the Legacy Corps, Vortis's elite cadre of senior metahumans, sprang into action. They formed a protective barrier of psionic energy, deflecting the incoming fire. From the Chalnoth ship emerged a sleek shuttle. It touched down amid the chaos, disgorging a squad of heavily armed soldiers led by a lithe, shadowy figure. Calrath, the Empire's deadliest assassin. Calrath moved with preternatural speed, evading blasts of energy from defending students. His own weapons fired with unerring accuracy, each shot finding a vulnerable target. Bodies fell in his wake as he carved a path towards the heart of the Academy. Zenith, Vortis's star pupil, intercepted the assassin. The air between them warped as their minds clashed in a titanic psychic duel. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist around the combatants. For a moment, it appeared Zenith might prevail, but Calrath's relentless assault proved too much. With a final, savage thrust of psionic energy, he shattered Zenith's defenses. The young metahuman crumpled, his essence extinguished. Vortis's anguished cry echoed across the battlefield. She descended like an avenging goddess, cosmic fire erupting from her hands. Calrath barely escaped, fleeing back to his ship with angry red scars crisscrossing his face. As the Chalnoth forces retreated, Vortis surveyed the devastation. Fires smoldered across the once pristine campus. The air was thick with acrid smoke and the lamentations of the wounded. But it was the sight of Zenith's broken body that truly broke her. Vortis knelt beside her fallen student, gently closing his sightless eyes. When she stood, her expression was carved from stone. "No more running," she declared. "No more hiding. It's time we took the fight to them." In the days that followed, Vortis assembled the Cosmic Vanguard. She handpicked the most skilled and determined of her metahuman warriors. As they prepared for their first strike against the Chalnoth, Vortis addressed her team. "The enemy believes they can exterminate us," she said, her eyes blazing with inner fire. "They're wrong. We are the next step in human evolution, and we will not be erased. Today we begin writing a new chapter in cosmic history." With a gesture, Vortis opened a shimmering portal. Beyond it lay the cold vastness of space, and their first target, a Chalnoth military outpost. The Cosmic Vanguard stepped through, ready to unleash their newfound powers on an unsuspecting galaxy. The Cosmic Vanguard's assault on the Chalnoth outpost was swift and merciless. Vortis led the charge, her hands wreathed in crackling energy as she tore through the station's defenses. Behind her, metahumans unleashed their powers in a dazzling display of destruction. As the last Chalnoth fell, Vortis stood amid the wreckage, panting. Victory felt hollow. She closed her eyes, reaching out with her cosmic senses to locate their next target. A violent tremor rocked the station. Vortis's eyes snapped open, widening in horror as she saw the fabric of space itself begin to unravel. The Chalnoth's secret weapon, the Corruptor Array, had been triggered. "Everyone, back to Earth!" Vortis shouted, throwing open a portal. Her students leapt through, but she hesitated. Someone had to stay behind to ensure the array's complete destruction. With a resigned nod, Vortis sealed the portal. She turned to face the pulsing heart of the corruptor array, channeling every ounce of her power into a concentrated blast. The resulting explosion shattered reality itself. Vortis found herself adrift in a kaleidoscopic maelstrom of fractured existence. Shards of memory and possibility swirled around her, lush earth landscapes blending seamlessly with denobulin architecture. Familiar faces flickered in and out of view, Eric's gentle smile, Lila's determined gaze, even her father Zarthon's stern visage. As she tumbled through the cosmic tempest, doubt gnawed at Vortis. Had her crusade against the Chalnoth been just? In her quest to protect humanity, had she become the very monster she sought to destroy? The entropy vortex pulled at her, offering the temptation of oblivion. It would be so easy to let go, to allow herself to dissipate into the void. But as a vision of her students, the next generation of Homo Superior, flashed before her, Vortis made her choice. She would not surrender to nothingness. With every fiber of her being, Vortis reached out across the fractured planes of reality. She grasped the disparate threads of existence, weaving them together through sheer force of will. Energy crackled around her as Vortis shaped a new omniverse from the cosmic wreckage. In this realm of infinite possibility, the boundaries between species and civilizations dissolved. A vast collaborative network of creators spread across the seamless plains, shaping new worlds through the power of unfettered imagination. At the heart of it all, Vortis crafted a reborn Earth. Verdant and unspoiled, it pulsed with potential. She populated it with the essence of those who had touched her life: Eric, Lila, Marcus, and countless others. In this paradise, unencumbered by past traumas, they could fully embrace their roles as artists and visionaries. As Vortis merged her consciousness with the very fabric of her new creation, she felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. No longer defined by titles or expectations, she became one with the creative force itself. The universe she had forged would continue to evolve and grow, and while Vortis's physical form might fade, her legacy would endure, an eternal sanctuary where the transformative power of art reigns supreme.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.